Zanzibar.
Zanzibar is a semi-autonomous part of Tanzania, in East Africa. It is composed of the Zanzibar Archipelago in the Indian Ocean, 25 to 50 kilometers off the coast of the mainland, and consists of numerous small islands and two large ones, Unguja and Pemba. The capital of Zanzibar, located on the island of Unguja, is Zanzibar City. Its historic center, known as Stone Town, is a World Heritage Site and is claimed to be the only functioning ancient town in East Africa. Zanzibar's main industries are spices, raffia, and tourism. In particular, the islands produce cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, and black pepper. For this reason, the islands, together with Tanzania's Mafia Island, are sometimes called the Spice Islands, a term also associated with the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. Zanzibar is the home of the endemic Zanzibar red colobus monkey, the Zanzibar servalan genet, and the, possibly extinct, Zanzibar leopard.
History. Before 1698.
The presence of microlithic tools suggests that Zanzibar has been home to intelligent humans for at least 20,000 years, which was the beginning of the later Stone Age. A Greco-Roman text between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD, the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, mentioned the island of Menoutheas, in ancient Greek Menotheas, which is probably Unguja pages 26-7. Little is known about the history of Zanzibar between the time of the Periplus and the death of Muhammad in 632 CE. Page 36. From that point forward, wars in Asia and increasing trade motivated Persians, Arabs, and Indians to visit or migrate to Zanzibar. Page 40. Persian traders used Zanzibar as a base for voyages between the Middle East, India, and Africa. Unguja, the larger island, offered a protected and defensible harbour, so although the archipelago offered few products of value, the Persians settled at what became Zanzibar City, Stone Town, a convenient point from which to trade with East African coastal towns. They established garrisons on the islands and built the first Zoroastrian fire temples and mosques in the southern hemisphere. The impact of these traders and immigrants on the Swahili culture is controversial. During the Middle Ages, as a result, it remains debatable whether the Swahili culture of the Middle Ages was primarily an Arab or Persian invention, or rather the result of indigenous African development. Vasco da Gama's visit in 1498 marked the beginning of European influence. In 1503 or 1504, Zanzibar became part of the Portuguese Empire when Captain Lourenço Ravasco Marques landed and demanded and received tribute from the Sultan in exchange for peace. Page 99. Zanzibar remained a possession of Portugal for almost 2 centuries. It initially became part of the Portuguese province of Arabia and Ethiopia and was administered by a governor-general. Around 1571, Zanzibar became part of the Western Division of the Portuguese Empire and was administered from Mozambique. Page 15. It appears, however, that the Portuguese did not closely administer Zanzibar. The first English ship to visit Unguja, the Edward Bonaventure in 1591, found that there was no Portuguese fort or garrison. The extent of their occupation was a trade depot where produce was purchased and collected for shipment to Mozambique. In other respects, the affairs of the island were managed by the local king, the predecessor of the Mkuu of Dunga. Page 81. This hands-off approach ended when Portugal established a fort on Pemba around 1635 in response to the Sultan of Mombasa's slaughter of Portuguese residents several years earlier. Portugal had long considered Pemba to be a troublesome launching point for rebellions in Mombasa against Portuguese rule. Page 85. The sultans of Unguja to whom the Portuguese referred repeatedly in historical accounts probably were of African origin, with possibly some strain of Persian or Asiatic blood derived from the Persian colonists of the later Middle Ages. While the Persians left many examples of their presence on Pemba, such as ruined stone houses, the sultans of Unguja left almost no trace of their existence. Their capital at Unguja probably was an extensive native town of African construction and composed mainly of perishable materials. Page 89.
Sultanate of Zanzibar.
Although there were Arabs in Zanzibar and the remainder of coastal East Africa both before and after the Portuguese, the political situation was far different. In 1698, Zanzibar fell under the control of the Sultanate of Oman. In 1832, page 162 or 1840, page 2045, the date varies among sources, said bin Sultan moved his capital from Muscat, Oman to Stone Town in Zanzibar City. After Said's death in June 1856, two of his sons, Fuwaini bin Said and Majid bin Said, struggled over the succession. Said's will divided his dominions into two separate principalities, with Fuwaini to become the Sultan of Oman and Majid to become the first Sultan of Zanzibar. The brothers quarrelled about the will, which was eventually upheld by Lord Charles Canning, Great Britain's Viceroy and Governor-General of India, pages 163-4, pages 22-3. Until around 1890, the Sultans of Zanzibar controlled a substantial portion of the East African coast, known as Zanj, which included Mombasa, Dar es Salaam, and trading routes extending much further inland, such as the route leading to Kindu on the Congo River. Beginning in 1886, Great Britain and Germany plotted to obtain parts of the Zanzibar Sultanate for their own empires. Page 188. In October 1886, a British-German border commission established the Zanj as a 10 nautical mile, 19 kilometers, wide strip along most of the coast of East Africa, stretching from Cape Delgado, now in Mozambique, to Kipni, now in Kenya, including Mombasa and Dar es Salaam. Over the next few years, however, almost all of these mainland possessions were lost to European imperial powers. The sultans developed an economy of trade and cash crops in the Zanzibar archipelago with a ruling Arab elite. Ivory was a major trade good. The archipelago, also known as the Spice Islands, was famous worldwide for its cloves and other spices, and plantations were developed to grow them. The archipelago's commerce gradually fell into the hands of traders from the Indian subcontinent, whom Said bin Sultan encouraged to settle on the islands. During his 14-year reign as Sultan, Majid bin Said consolidated his power around the East African slave trade. Malindi in Zanzibar City was East Africa's main port for the slave market between Africa and Asia, including the Middle East, and in the mid-19th century as many as 50,000 slaves passed annually through the port. One of Majid's brothers, Bargash bin Said, succeeded him and helped abolish the slave trade in the Zanzibar archipelago and largely developed Gurjar's infrastructure. Another brother of Majid, Khalifa bin Said, was the third Sultan of Zanzibar and furthered the archipelago's progress toward abolishing slavery. Page 172.
British Protectorate.
Control of Zanzibar eventually came into the hands of the British Empire. Part of the political impetus for this was the 19th-century movement for the abolition of the slave trade. Zanzibar was the center of the Arab slave trade, and in 1822, the British Council in Muscat put pressure on Sultan Said to end the slave trade. The first of a series of anti-slavery treaties with Britain was signed by Said, which prohibited slave transport south and east of the Moresby Line, from Cape Delgado in Africa to Diu Head on the coast of India. Said lost the revenue he would have received as duty on all slaves sold, so to make up for this shortfall he encouraged the development of the slave trade in Zanzibar itself. Said came under increasing pressure from the British to abolish slavery, and in 1842 the British government told the Zanzibari ruler it wished to abolish the slave trade to Arabia, Oman, Persia and the Red Sea. Ships from the Royal Navy were employed to enforce the anti-slavery treaties by capturing any dhows carrying slaves, but with only 4 ships patrolling a huge area of sea, the British Navy found it hard to enforce the treaties as ships from France, Germany, Spain, Portugal and the United States continued to carry slaves. In 1856 Sultan Majid consolidated his power around the East African slave trade, and in 1873 Sir John Kirk informed his successor, Sultan Bargash, that a total blockade of Zanzibar was imminent, and Bargash reluctantly signed the Anglo-Zanzibari Treaty which abolished the slave trade in the Sultan's territories, the closing of all slave markets and the protection of liberated slaves. The relationship between Britain and the German Empire. at that time the nearest relevant colonial power, was formalized by the 1890 Heligoland-Zanzibar Treaty, in which Germany agreed to recognize the British protectorate over the islands of Zanzibar and Pemba. That year, Zanzibar became a protectorate, not a colony, of Britain. From 1890 to 1913, traditional viziers were appointed to govern as puppets, switching to a system of British residents, effectively governors, from 1913 to 1963. The death of the pro-British Sultan Hamad bin Thuwaini on August 25, 1896 and the succession of Sultan Khalid bin Bargash, who the British did not approve, led to the Anglo-Zanzibar War. On the morning of August 27, 1896, ships of the Royal Navy destroyed the Beit el Hukam Palace. A ceasefire was declared 38 minutes later, and to this day the bombardment stands as the shortest war in history.
Independence and subsequent merger with Tanganyika.
The islands gained independence from Great Britain on December 10, 1963 as a constitutional monarchy. A month later, the bloody Zanzibar Revolution, in which hundreds to 20,000 of Arabs and Indians were killed and a genocide and thousands more expelled, led to the establishment of the People's Republic of Zanzibar and Pemba. In April 1964, the republic merged with mainland Tanganyika. This United Republic of Tanganyika and Zanzibar was soon renamed, as a portmanteau, the United Republic of Tanzania, of which Zanzibar remains a semi-autonomous region.
Government.
As a semi-autonomous part of Tanzania, Zanzibar has its own government, known as the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar. It is made up of the Revolutionary Council and House of Representatives. The House of Representatives has a similar composition to the National Assembly of Tanzania. 50 members are elected directly from electoral constituencies to serve 5-year terms. 10 members are appointed by the President of Zanzibar. 15 special seats are for women members of political parties that have representation in the House of Representatives. 6 members serve ex officio, including all regional commissioners and the Attorney General. 5 of these 81 members are then elected to represent Zanzibar in the National Assembly. Unguja has 3 administrative regions, Zanzibar Central South, Zanzibar North and Zanzibar Urban West. Pemba has 2, Pemba North and Pemba South. Concerning the independence and sovereignty of Zanzibar, Tanzania Prime Minister Nakupenda said on July 3, 2008 that there was nothing like the sovereignty of Zanzibar in the union government unless the constitution is changed in future. Zanzibar House of Representatives members from both the ruling party, Chair Makama Pinduzi, and the opposition party, Civic United Front, disagreed and stood firmly in recognizing Zanzibar as a fully autonomous state.
Politics.
Zanzibar has a government of national unity, with the current president of Zanzibar being Ali Mohammed Shein, since November 1, 2010. There are many political parties in Zanzibar, but the most popular parties are the Chair Makama Pinduzi, CCM, and the Civic United Front, CUF. Since the early 1990s, the politics of the Archipelago have been marked by repeated clashes between these two parties. Contested elections in October 2000 led to a massacre on January 27, 2001 when, according to Human Rights Watch, the army and police shot into crowds of protesters, killing at least 35 and wounding more than 600. Those forces, accompanied by ruling party officials and militias, also went on a house-to-house rampage, indiscriminately arresting, beating, and sexually abusing residents. Approximately 2,000 temporarily fled to Kenya. Violence erupted again after another contested election on October 31, 2005, with the CUF claiming that its rightful victory had been stolen from it. 9 people were killed. Following 2005, negotiations between the two parties aiming at the long-term resolution of the tensions and a power-sharing accord took place, but they suffered repeated setbacks. The most notable of these took place in April 2008, when the CUF walked away from the negotiating table following a CCM call for a referendum to approve of what had been presented as a done deal on the power-sharing agreement. In November 2009, the then President of Zanzibar, Amani Abeid Karume, met with CUF Secretary-General Sif Sharif Hamad at the State House to discuss how to save Zanzibar from future political turmoil and to end the animosity between them. This move was welcomed by many, including the United States. It was the first time since the multi-party system was introduced in Zanzibar that the CUF agreed to recognize Karume as the legitimate president of Zanzibar. A proposal to amend Zanzibar's constitution to allow rival parties to form governments of national unity was adopted by 66.2% of voters on July 31, 2010.
Geography.
Zanzibar is located in the Indian Ocean. It is in the East Africa time zone, UTC+3, and does not use daylight saving time. The northern tip of Ungerja Island is located at 5.72 degrees south, 39.30 degrees east, with the southernmost point at 6.48 degrees south, 39.51 degrees east. The island is separated from the Tanzanian mainland by a channel, which at its narrowest point is 36.5 kilometers, 22.7 miles, across. The island is about 85 kilometers, 53 miles, long and 39 kilometers, 24 miles, wide, with an area of 1,464 kilometers to 565 square miles. Ungerja is mainly low-lying, with its highest point being 120 meters, 390 feet. Ungerja is characterized by beautiful sandy beaches with fringing coral reefs. The reefs are rich in marine biodiversity. The northern tip of Pemba Island is located at 4.87 degrees south, 39.68 degrees east, and the southernmost point is located at 5.47 degrees south, 39.72 degrees east. The island is separated from the Tanzanian mainland by a channel some 56 kilometers, 35 miles, wide. The island is about 67 kilometers, 42 miles, long and 23 kilometers, 14 miles, wide, with an area of 985 kilometers to 380 square miles. Pemba is also mainly low-lying, with its highest point being 95 meters, 312 feet.
Climate.
The heat of summer, corresponding to the northern hemisphere winter, is often cooled by strong sea breezes associated with the northeast monsoon, known as Kaskazini in Kiswahili, particularly on the north and east coasts. Being near to the equator, the islands are warm year-round. Rains occur in November but are characterized by brief showers. Longer rains normally occur in March, April, and May in association with the southwest monsoon, known locally as Kusai in Kiswahili.
Wildlife. Unguja.
The main island of Zanzibar, Ungerja, has a fauna reflecting its connection to the African mainland during the last ice age. Endemic mammals with continental relatives include the Zanzibar red colobus, one of Africa's rarest primates, with perhaps only 1,500 existing. Isolated on this island for at least 1,000 years, the Zanzibar red colobus, Pricolobus kirka, is recognized as a distinct species, with different coat patterns, calls, and food habits than related colobus species on the mainland. The Zanzibar red colobus live in a wide variety of drier areas of coastal thickets and coral rag scrub, as well as mangrove swamps and agricultural areas. About one-third of them live in and around Jozani Forest. The easiest place to see the colobus are on farmland adjacent to the reserve. They are accustomed to people and the low vegetation means they come close to the ground. Rare native animals include the Zanzibar leopard, which is critically endangered and possibly extinct, and the recently described Zanzibar servalan genet. There are no large wild animals in Ungerja, and forest areas such as Jozani are inhabited by monkeys, bush pigs, small antelopes, civets, and, rumor has it, the elusive leopard. Various species of mongoose can also be found on the island. There is a wide variety of bird life and a large number of butterflies in rural areas.
Pemba.
Pemba Island is separated from Unguja Island and the African continent by deep channels and has a correspondingly restricted fauna, reflecting its comparative isolation from the mainland. The island is home to the Pemba flying fox.
Demography. 2002 census.
The 2002 census is the most recent census for which results have been reported. The total population of Zanzibar was 984,625, with an annual growth rate of 3.1%. The population of Zanzibar City, which was the largest city, was 205,870. Around two-thirds of the people, 622,459, lived on Unguja, Zanzibar Island, with the greatest proportion settled in the densely populated west. Besides Zanzibar City, other towns on Unguja include Kani, Mbweni, Manjafwani, Chwaka, and Nungwi. Outside of these towns, most people live in small villages and are engaged in farming or fishing. The population of Pemba Island was 362,166. The largest town on the island was Chwaka, with a population of 19,283. The smaller towns are Wet and Mkoani. Mafia Island, the other major island of the Zanzibar Archipelago but administered by mainland Tanzania, had a total population of 40,801.
Ethnic origins and language.
The people of Zanzibar are of diverse ethnic origins. The first permanent residents of Zanzibar seem to have been the ancestors of the Hatamu and Tumchu, who began arriving from the East African mainland around AD 1000. They belonged to various mainland ethnic groups, and on Zanzibar they lived in small villages and did not coalesce to form larger political units. Because they lacked central organization, they were easily subjugated by outsiders. Zanzibar today is mostly populated by ethnic Swahili, but there is also a minority population of Asians, originally from India and Arab countries. Zanzibaris speak Kiswahili, a language which is spoken extensively in East Africa. Many locals also speak English, French, or Italian.
Standard of living and health.
Considerable disparities exist in the standard of living for inhabitants of Pemba and Unguja, as well as the disparity between urban and rural populations. The average annual income is $250. About half the population lives below the poverty line. Despite a relatively high standard of primary health care and education, infant mortality in Zanzibar is 54 out of 1,000 live births, which is 10.0% lower than the rate in mainland Tanzania. The child mortality rate in Zanzibar is 73 out of 1,000 live births, which is 21.5% lower than the rate in mainland Tanzania. Malnutrition affects an estimated 1 in 3 of Zanzibar's people. Life expectancy at birth is 57 years, which is significantly lower than the 2010 world average of 67.2. The general prevalence of HIV/AIDS in the sexually active population of Zanzibar is 0.6%, with the rate slightly higher in females, 0.7%, than males, 0.5%. The rate for divorced women, however, is 10% and is even higher for injecting drug users, 16%, men who have sex with men, MSM, 12.3%, and female sex workers, 10.8%. Among MSM, 13.9% reported injecting drugs within the previous 3 months, 77.5% reported being paid for sex within the previous year, and 71.2% reported having female sex partners within the previous year.
Religion.
More than 99% of Zanzibar's population are Muslim. Most of the remaining 1% are Christian.
Economy.
Ancient pottery implies trade routes with Zanzibar as far back as the time of the ancient Assyrians. Traders from Arabia, the Persian Gulf region of modern-day Iran, especially Shiraz, and West India probably visited Zanzibar as early as the 1st century. they used the monsoon winds to sail across the Indian Ocean to land at the sheltered harbour located on the site of present-day Zanzibar city. The clove, originating from the Moluccan Islands, today in Indonesia, was introduced in Zanzibar by the Omani sultans in the first half of the 19th century. Zanzibar, mainly Pemba Island, was once the world's leading clove producer, but annual clove sales have plummeted by 80% since the 1970s. Zanzibar's clove industry has been crippled by a fast-moving global market, international competition, and a hangover from Tanzania's failed experiment with socialism in the 1960s and 1970s, when the government controlled clove prices and exports. Zanzibar now ranks a distant third, with Indonesia supplying 75% of the world's cloves compared to Zanzibar's 7%. Zanzibar exports spices, seaweed, and fine raffia. It also has a large fishing and dugout canoe production. Tourism is a major foreign currency earner. The government of Zanzibar legalized foreign exchange bureau on the islands before mainland Tanzania moved to do so. The effect was to increase the availability of consumer commodities. The government has also established a free port area, which provides the following benefits: contribution to economic diversification by providing a window for free trade as well as stimulating the establishment of support services. Administration of a regime that imports, exports, and warehouses general merchandise. Adequate storage facilities and other infrastructure to cater for effective operation of trade. And creation of an efficient management system for effective re-exportation of goods. The island's manufacturing sector is limited mainly to import substitution industries, such as cigarettes, shoes, and processed agricultural products. In 1992, the government designated 2 export-producing zones and encouraged the development of offshore financial services. Zanzibar still imports much of its staple requirements, petroleum products, and manufactured articles. There is also a possibility of oil availability in Zanzibar on the island of Pemba, and efforts have been made by the Tanzanian government and Zanzibar Revolutionary Government to exploit what could be one of the most significant discoveries in recent memory. Oil would help boost the economy of Zanzibar, but there have been disagreements about dividends between the Tanzanian mainland and Zanzibar, the latter claiming the oil should be excluded in union matters. In 2007, a Norwegian consultancy firm went to Zanzibar to determine how the region could develop its oil potential. The firm recommended that Zanzibar follow neoliberal economist Hernando de Soto Pola's ideas about the formalization of property rights for persons living on ancestral land for which they probably do not have a legal deed.
Education.
In 2000 there were 207 government schools and 118 privately owned schools in Zanzibar. There are also 2 universities and 1 college, Zanzibar University, the State University of Zanzibar, SUZA, and the Shakwani College of Education. SUZA was established in 1999, and is located in Stone Town, in the buildings of the former Institute of Kiswahili and Foreign Language, Takiluki. It is the only public institution for higher learning in Zanzibar, the other 2 institutions being private. In 2004, the 3 institutions had a total enrollment of 948 students, of whom 207 were female. The primary and secondary education system in Zanzibar is slightly different from that of the Tanzanian mainland. On the mainland, education is only compulsory for the 7 years of primary education, while in Zanzibar an additional 3 years of secondary education are compulsory and free. Students in Zanzibar score significantly less on standardized tests for reading and mathematics than students on the mainland. In the 1970s, 1980s and 1990s, national service after secondary education was necessary, but it is now voluntary and few students volunteer. Most choose to seek employment or attend teachers' colleges.
Transport. Roads.
Zanzibar has 1,600 kilometers of roads, of which 85% are tarmacked or semi-tarmacked. The remainder are earth roads, which are rehabilitated annually to make them passable throughout the year.
Public transportation.
There is no government-owned public transportation in Zanzibar. The privately owned della, as it is officially known in Zanzibar, is the only kind of public transportation. The term della originated from the Kiswahili word dala or 5 shillings during the 1970s and 80s when public transport cost 5 shillings.
Ports.
There are 5 ports in the islands of Unguja and Pemba, all operated and developed by the Zanzibar Ports Corporation. The main port at Malindi, which handles 90% of Zanzibar's trade, was built in 1925. The port was rehabilitated between 1989 and 1992 with financial assistance from the European Union. The Italian contractor, Cogfor Impressit, was supposed to build wharves that lasted 60 years. However, the wharves lasted only 11 years before crumbling and degenerating because the company deviated from the specifications. After a long legal battle, the company was required in 2005 by the International Court of Arbitration to pay Zanzibar $11.6 million in damages. The port was again rehabilitated between 2004 and 2009 with a €31 million grant from the European Union. The contract was awarded to MSC Phil & Sons of Denmark. The then director of the contractor suggested that the rehabilitation would last a minimum of 50 years. But the port is again facing problems, including sinking.
Ferry accidents.
The MV Faith, which began its final journey at the port of Dar es Salaam, sank in May 2009 shortly before docking at the port of Malindi. 6 of the 25 people aboard lost their lives. The MV Skagit, which also began its final journey at the port of Dar es Salaam, capsized in rough seas near Chum Island on July 18, 2012. The ferry had 447 passengers, with 81 dead, 212 missing and presumed drowned, and 154 rescued. The ferry left port despite warnings from the Tanzania Meteorological Agency for ships not to attempt the crossing from Dar es Salaam to Unguja Island because of the rough seas. A presidential commission reported in October 2012 that overloading was the cause of the disaster.
Worst maritime disaster in Tanzanian history.
The MV Spice Islander sank on September 10, 2011 after departing from Unguja Island for Pemba Island. In a report to the Zanzibar House of Representatives on October 14, 2011, Zanzibar's second vice president, Ambassador Sif Ali Adi, said that 2,764 people were missing, 203 bodies had been recovered, and 619 passengers were rescued. It was the worst maritime disaster in Tanzanian history. A presidential commission, however, reported 3 months later that 1,370 people were missing, 203 bodies had been recovered, and 941 passengers survived. Severe overloading caused the ferry to sink.
Airport.
Zanzibar's main airport, Zanzibar International Airport, can handle large passenger planes since 2011, which has resulted in an increase in passenger and cargo inflows and outflows. Since another increase in capacity by the end of 2013, it can serve up to 1.5 million passengers per year.
Energy.
The energy sector in Zanzibar consists of unreliable electric power, petroleum and petroleum products. It is also supplemented by firewood and its related products. Coal and gas are rarely used for either domestic and industrial purposes. Unguja, Zanzibar Island, gets most of its electric power from mainland Tanzania through a 39-kilometer, 100-megawatt submarine cable from Ras Kiamani, near Dar es Salaam, to Ras Fumba on Unguja. The laying of the cable was begun on October 10, 2012 by the Viscas Corporation of Japan and was funded by a $28.1 million grant from the United States through the Millennium Challenge Corporation. The cable became operational on April 13, 2013. The previous 45-megawatt cable, which was seldom maintained, was completed by Norway in 1980. Since May 2010, Pemba Island has had a 75-kilometer, 25-megawatt, subsea electrical link directly to mainland Tanzania. The cable project was financed through a €45 million grant from Norway and contributions of €8 million from the Zanzibar government and €4 million from the Tanzanian national government. The project ended years of dependence on unreliable and erratic diesel generation subject to frequent power cuts. Only about 20% of the cable's capacity was being used in January 2011, so it is anticipated that the cable will meet the island's needs for 20 to 25 years. Between 70 and 75% of the electricity generated is used domestically while less than 20% is used industrially. Fuel wood, charcoal and kerosene are widely used as sources of energy for cooking and lighting for most rural and urban areas. The consumption capacity of petroleum, gas, oil, kerosene and IDO is increasing annually, going from a total of 5,650 tons consumed in 1997 to more than 7,500 tons in 1999. From May 21 to June 19, 2008, Ungerjar suffered a major failure of its electricity system, which left the island without electrical service and mostly dependent on diesel generators. The failure originated in mainland Tanzania. Another blackout happened from December 10, 2009 to March 23, 2010, caused by a problem with the submarine cable that formerly supplied electricity from mainland Tanzania. This led to a serious shock to Ungerjar's fragile economy, which is heavily dependent on foreign tourism.
Culture.
Zanzibar's most famous event is the Zanzibar International Film Festival, also known as the Festival of the Dhow Countries. Every July, this event showcases the best of the Swahili coast art scene, including Zanzibar's favorite music, taarab. Important architectural features in Stone Town are the Livingston House, the old dispensary of Zanzibar, the Guliani Bridge, Mkongwe, the old fort of Zanzibar, and the House of Wonders. The town of Kadichi features the Hammam Persian baths, built by immigrants from Shiraz, Iran during the reign of Bargash bin Said. Zanzibar also is the only place in Eastern African countries to have the longest settlement houses formerly known as Mckinsey flats, which were built by the aid from East Germany during 1970s to solve housing problems in Zanzibar.
Media and communication.
In 1974, Zanzibar became the first area in Africa to introduce color television. Because of long-standing opposition to television by President Julius Nyerere, the first television service on mainland Tanzania was not introduced until 1994. The broadcaster in Zanzibar is called Television Zanzibar, TVZ. Among the famous reporters of TVZ during the 1980s and 1990s were the late Elway Alawi (1961–1996), the elder sister of Inat Alawi, famous taarab singer during the 1980s, Neema Musa, Sharifa Maulid, Fatma Mzee, Zainab Ali, Ramadan Ali, and Khamis. Zanzibar has 1 AM radio station and 21 FM radio stations. In terms of landline communications, Zanzibar is served by the Tanzania Telecommunications Company Limited and Zantel Tanzania. Almost all mobile and internet companies serving mainland Tanzania are also available in Zanzibar.
Sport.
Football is the most popular sport in Zanzibar, overseen by the Zanzibar Football Association. Zanzibar is an associate member of the Confederation of African Football, CAF. This means that the Zanzibar national football team is not eligible to enter national CAF competitions, such as the African Nations Cup, but Zanzibar's football clubs get representation at the CAF Confederation Cup and the CAF Champions League. The national team participates in non-FIFA football tournaments such as the FIFA World Cup, and the ELF Cup. Because Zanzibar is not a member of FIFA, their team is not eligible for the FIFA World Cup. The Zanzibar Football Association also has a Premier League for the top clubs, which was created in 1981. Since 1992, there has also been judo in Zanzibar. The founder, Mr. Tsuyoshi Shimoka, established a strong team which participates in national and international competitions. In 1999, Zanzibar Judo Association, ZJA was registered and became an active member of Tanzania Olympic Committee and International Judo Federation. March 2013 The Zanzibar Shotokan Karate, Zashoka, has joined the International Shotokan Karate Federation, ISKF.
Notable people.
Farouk Abdullahi, who was Princess Diana's designer. Freddie Mercury, born Farouk Bulshra, of the rock band Queen, was born in Stone Town, Zanzibar.
Gallery. Sultanate of Zanzibar.
Although there were Arabs in Zanzibar and the remainder of coastal East Africa both before and after the Portuguese, the political situation was far different. In 1698, Zanzibar fell under the control of the Sultanate of Oman. In 1832, page 162 or 1840, page 2045, the date varies among sources, said bin Sultan moved his capital from Muscat, Oman to Stone Town in Zanzibar City. After Said's death in June 1856, two of his sons, Fuwaini bin Said and Majid bin Said, struggled over the succession. Said's will divided his dominions into two separate principalities, with Fuwaini to become the Sultan of Oman and Majid to become the first Sultan of Zanzibar. The brothers quarrelled about the will, which was eventually upheld by Lord Charles Canning, Great Britain's Viceroy and Governor-General of India, pages 163-4. Pages 22-3. Until around 1890, the Sultans of Zanzibar controlled a substantial portion of Portuguese fort or garrison. The extent of their occupation was a trade depot where produce was purchased and collected for shipment to Mozambique. In other respects, the affairs of the island were managed by the local king, the predecessor of the Mkuu of Dunga. Page 81. This hands-off approach ended when Portugal established a fort on Pemba around 1635 in response to the Sultan of Mombasa's slaughter of Portuguese residents several years earlier. Portugal had long considered Pemba to be a troublesome launching point for rebellions in Mombasa against Portuguese rule, page 85. The Sultans of Gurjar, to whom the Portuguese referred repeatedly in historical accounts, probably were of African origin, with possibly some strain of Persian or Asiatic blood derived from the Persian colonists of the later Middle Ages. While the Persians left many examples of their presence on Pemba, such as ruined stone houses, the Sultans of Gurjar left almost no trace of their existence. Their capital at Gurjar probably was an extensive native town of African construction and composed mainly of perishable materials, page 89. The first Zoroastrian fire temples and mosques in the Southern Hemisphere. The impact of these traders and immigrants on the Swahili culture is controversial. During the Middle Ages, as a result, it remains debatable whether the Swahili culture of the Middle Ages was primarily an Arab or Persian invention, or rather the result of indigenous African development. Vasco da Gama's visit in 1498 marked the beginning of European influence. In 1503 or 1504, Zanzibar became part of the Portuguese Empire when Captain Lourenço Ravasco Marques landed and demanded and received tribute from the Sultan in exchange for peace, page 99. Zanzibar remained a possession of Portugal for almost 2 centuries. It initially became part of the Portuguese province of Arabia and Ethiopia and was administered by a governor-general. Around 1571, Zanzibar became part of the Western Division of the Portuguese Empire and was administered from Mozambique, page 15. It appears, however, that the Portuguese did not closely administer Zanzibar. The first English ship to visit Gurjar, the Edward Bonaventure in 1591, found that there was
Zanzibar.
Zanzibar is a semi-autonomous part of Tanzania, in East Africa. It is composed of the Zanzibar Archipelago in the Indian Ocean, 25 to 50 kilometers off the coast of the mainland, and consists of numerous small islands and 2 large ones, Gurjar, and Pemba. The capital of Zanzibar, located on the island of Gurjar, is Zanzibar City. Its historic center, known as Stone Town, is a World Heritage Site and is claimed to be the only functioning ancient town in East Africa. Zanzibar's main industries are spices, raffia, and tourism. In particular, the islands produce cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, and black pepper. For this reason, the islands, together with Tanzania's Mafia Island, are sometimes called the Spice Islands, a term also associated with the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. Zanzibar is the home of the endemic Zanzibar red colobus monkey, the Zanzibar servalan genet, and the, possibly extinct, Zanzibar leopard.
History. Before 1698.
The presence of microlithic tools suggests that Zanzibar has been home to intelligent humans for at least 20,000 years, which was the beginning of the later Stone Age. A Greco-Roman text between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD, the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, mentioned the island of Monotheas, in ancient Greek Menotheas, which is probably Ungerjar pages 26-7. Little is known about the history of Zanzibar between the time of the Periplus and the death of Muhammad in 632 CE. Page 36. From that point forward, wars in Asia and increasing trade motivated Persians, Arabs, and Indians to visit or migrate to Zanzibar. Page 40. Persian traders used Zanzibar as a base for voyages between the Middle East, India, and Africa. Ungerjar, the larger island, offered a protected and defensible harbour, so although the archipelago offered few products of value, the Persians settled at what became Zanzibar City, Stone Town, a convenient point from which to trade with East African coastal towns. They established garrisons on the islands and built